Lords and ladies of the Duchy, welcome to episode 1 of Duke's D&D Debauchery. Basically, what it is that we're going to be doing here is recounting the current campaign that I am running for a group of friends. Now, understand that because I am running the campaign currently, I cannot exactly give away every single thing that I would like to in regards to lore or backstory or character connections due to my players probably being nosy enough to happen to listen to this and try and maybe suss out some secrets. So, the plan for this is to basically try and go session by session, maybe 2 sessions at a time, depending on what all is happening, and give you guys a quick recap of those happenings. Understand that this is a homebrew world. The universe itself I refer to as the conduit. It is 7 interlinked planets that were all put there by one of the very original overgods, who goes by the name Impensis Opus. Now, there will be a video coming out later on that better discusses this, but just for your sake, having this be the first episode of the 7 worlds, this story only takes place as of right now on one of them, the world of Renkaat. And without further ado, let's discuss the first session. So each of our players starts by being told that they receive a note, and this note tells them to meet in the town of Anikia. The town of Hetham in Anikia, the kingdom of Anikia, in the tavern known as Tokrin's Burrow. The note tells them to talk to the barkeep and ask for the salted pork, in which case the barkeep, who none of my players asked the barkeep's name, decided would then be led into the back room. So one by one, the players arrive and are eventually pointed in the direction of the back room, where they are all met with a character who's described to them about 5.5 feet tall. They're in a simple green cloak. They have a simple tan shirt underneath, and they are present in the room when the first of our characters arrive. So the characters that we have at this point are Milo. He is a halfling druid. We have Gorstag. He appears to be a human rogue. We have Von Beck, Deep Delver, who happens to be a dwarf paladin. We have Roderick, who is a human fighter. And we have Dox, who is a mystic. A tiefling mystic, purple-skinned tiefling mystic. Now, I understand that mystic is not one of the officially supported playable classes, but seeing as how in the other campaigns that I've run, mystics play a rather large, they're important to the story, needless to say. So mystics are one of the classes that were available to my players. Our character Gorstag, who appears to be a human, is actually a changeling, and that comes with its very own particular set of circumstances. Now, all of my players, the players know that he's a changeling, but none of the characters at this point know that he's a changeling, and typically changelings tries to keep that under wraps. So basically, the party all meets in this back room where this 5.5 foot tall character, shoulder-length brown hair, slightly tan skin, sea green eyes, places a box on the table and puts their finger up to their lips, basically saying, like, don't make noise, and then basically takes this box that he sets on this table. Seems to have like these extensions. One of them's like a Y-shaped extension that ends up going into your ears, and the other one appears to be almost like a cup that kind of goes over your mouth. And eventually, this character is able to, with just miming actions, explain to the party, hey, go ahead and, put the like the Y-shaped thing that it almost like pincers, they go into your ear, and then put the cup over your mouth. And after this, he explains to them that his name is Dawn. And that he has gathered all of them because there's a very important mission going on. There has been a call that has been put out by the Kingdom of Anikia to find a ring. This ring was apparently owned by the king who established the Kingdom of Anikia, Hetham Anikia, some 650 odd years ago or so. But has since been lost since the king unfortunately passed away under very questionable circumstances. But given that the elves on kind of what we would perceive as the eastern side of the map, from the country Athenia, are currently kind of building up their army to become ready to invade. Now, granted, they are on essentially the other side of the world. It would be a very, very large it would be an exceptionally large effort to try and bring the Athenian army all the way over to Anikia. But basically, Anikia is the only one of the Western countries who actually has a standing military and a navy that could stand up against what the Athenians could bring to the front. But then there is also the southern kingdoms to be worried about. Celia, Shu, and Marawat. These are the Shu and Marawat are two clans actually of orcs. They have slightly different physical characteristics. And then Celia is Tabaxi, catfolk, who in their particular portion of land is actually borders the southern border of Anikia. But the Athenians aren't particularly interested in anything that the south has to offer. They're more worried about what Anikia has to offer, given that it's very, very fertile farmland, as well as the access to the particular types of resources in their mountains happen to be very, very prosperous. And so that's kind of what's on the elves' mind moving forward. And so given that the council, which is the ruling body of the Kingdom of Anikia, it is 4 individuals, one for each of the 4 major races. There is a human, who is currently represented by King Eris. There is the Asamar, currently represented by King Kettle. There is the Tieflings, currently represented by, I have her name here, Beardy. And then the last is the King of the Dwarves. Those are the 4 primary kings. I have his name, and it is Torbran, King of the Dwarves. And so that's kind of the current ruling society. They particularly, they're all referred to as kings, even though under the official charter they are counselors to the king. But there's more to that as the players get into it. But basically, these 4 counselors have decided amongst themselves that, well, we've heard about this ancient relic. We need to send people out to go and find this ancient relic and return it to us. So, basically, the party's been informed about this, but Dawn has some particular insight as to the location of this relic that he would like to share with the party. And that's why he reached out to all of them, in particular because he basically, what he explains is that he thinks that they're all capable, and he doesn't want this information necessarily to go into the wrong hands. So it's a little bit of a kind of going out on a limb. Dawn is going out on a limb for these individuals, that they might go out and retrieve the relic and return it. And the the words that he gives them is that he doesn't tell them to. He says that he will pay 50 gold more to each of them than what the kingdom is offering, and the kingdom itself is offering 1,000 gold for the turn in of this ring back to the kingdom. And so Don is basically like, look, I understand that there are 5 of you. That would be 200 gold each, right? I will pay you each 250 gold if you go and get this ring and give it to its rightful owner. And that's some of the foreshadowing that Don chooses to do in that moment. And slowly but surely, all of the players through their characters agree that, yeah, absolutely, we'll go out to whatever this place is and we'll get the ring and we'll distribute it to its rightful owner. So where is it? Don explains to them that there's an abandoned summer palace that Hethemanikia inhabited, but it's at the far end of the King's Road. It's about a 3-week journey by horse. And it's at the mountainous western edge of the Inikian kingdom, although it is it's northwest of the city itself, but it's mostly west. Now, basically, at this point, the party is like, oh, okay, cool. So we've got a mission to go do. We've got a task. So let's go and make sure that we have all of the things necessary that we need before going forward. So they all go up to basically, like, a couple of them. It's particularly Roderick, Von Beck, and Gorstad go up to the barkeep, and they ask the barkeep about where it is that they can buy goods, and the barkeep points them in the direction of Lumot Poles, a general store of sorts, which we'll get into. But the one that I kind of want to dive into first is that Dox, again, our mystic tiefling female, asks the barkeep if there's a library nearby. Now, our barkeep has a glimmer in their eye as they tell Dox very specific directions. You need to go out of my door. You need to turn right. You need to take 200 paces. Then you will turn right. There will be a door. You will go through the door. You will ascend the staircase, and there will be a library waiting for you. And so Dox follows these instructions specifically. She goes in, and there happens to be there's a desk. After she goes the 200 spaces, she opens the door, she ascends the stairs, there's a desk, there's an individual sitting behind the desk with some spectacles and some fancy-ish clothes, but nothing ostentatious necessarily. And basically she's like, hey, yeah, we're I'm just kind of looking for information on this ring or whatever. And so the particular individual at the desk of the library is like, yeah, absolutely. I know where some of these books already are because I've been looking into it. I've been researching it a little bit myself. Why don't you come with me and I can get you set up and get you reading. And so Dox takes the time and sits down and reads a little bit, and eventually the individual who greeted her sits down with her and is like, so what have you found in particular? And Dox kind of let slip that she believes that the ring might be at the summer palace of Hethemanikia. And this individual seems rather interested in that theoretical location. Eventually, one of the clerks, who is also attending to the library, comes and refers to this individual who is sitting with Dox as His Majesty. This is King Kettle of the ASMR, that happens to run a private library that Dox just so happened to wander into, and unfortunately might have revealed the entirety of their plans, at least as far as where they believe that the ring was, to the king who wants the ring. So that was a fun little bit of beginning interaction, but eventually Dox leaves there, and the one passing thing that the king says at the very end is, "Remember, Dox, the kingdom is counting on you." Now, eventually, the entirety of the party makes their way to Lumott's. Although one of the last things that they do at Tokran's burrow is they end up getting a tankard to go, which costs them 1 silver piece for the actual tankard itself, as well as for it to be filled. And then any time that they would like to come back and refill it, it is only a copper versus the 4 or 5 copper that it would cost a regular mug of ale. And the one particular thing about the tankard to go is that it is filled with a very special brew, and everyone who happens to taste the tankard to go thinks that it is the best ale that they have ever had. And it was a really, really fun interaction to watch them all like, oh yeah, my character is, and it's very interesting because Von Beck, Deep Delver, our dwarvish paladin, the god that he worships, is technically Dionysus, but in my homebrew, they are referred to as Kil'jaeden, and obviously the god of drink, so this is like his big thing, so he's infatuated by this for quite a while. But eventually they all make it to Lumott's, and so the introduction into Lumott's is that the characters walk like down towards basically almost the entrance of the inner city of Hetham, and it's kind of like this pretty basic shop front, right? Like you have the sign that juts out, and you see like the door or whatever, and they walk in, or they open up the door, but now it's a set of stairs downwards, so they follow the stair downwards, and then it opens up into kind of this loft almost that's over the store itself. They see what appears to be a bear standing behind the counter, and there are no stairs down to this lower level. But the bear, having what appears to be a bear, having heard them enter, opens up looks up to them and greets them as, "Hello, friend. It is a pleasure to have you here," and waves his hand, and the banister is like living wood, and then forms into a staircase that leads down into the store. And so he greets every single group of individuals, and they get their basic early shopping, and they're introduced to Lumot Pole. Two interesting things about Lumot Pole. The first interesting thing is that he is a changeling werebear. He is one of the only changelings that we know of that is open about what it is that they are. And he's obviously got some extra stuff going on because he is a werebear, and he finds himself in his werebear form most often. At least whenever players go and interact in his store, he always is in their werebear form. The other thing is that they have a whole lot of copies of themselves, simulacrum style things going on, so you can basically interact with all 5, however many players there are at the same time. They can all have a Lumot to interact with. It also allows for like separate private conversations, etc., etc. But there is an interaction between Lumot and Gorstag, where Gorstag basically goes into like this back room where all of like the ropes and line and like twine and things are kind of like in the side room, and Gorstag basically is snuffed out, literally sniffed out by the enhanced perception of the werebear form, as being a changeling, as being part of a Lumot refers to him as a dirling of the brood, and he wishes Lumot wishes him the best of luck because they belong to the same clan at the end of the day. And so with that, all of our players gather what it is that they need prior to leaving, and they set out outside of the city of Hethum and into the wild blue yonder, west and north slightly into the deeper reaches of the kingdom of Nicaea. Now, the city of Hethum itself is a fortress city. There is the outer walls of the city, which are approximately 60 feet high all the way around, and they go, and they're between 30 and 40 foot thick, depending on the particular section, and that covers all the way around basically the slums of the city. There's not anything particularly outside of those walls. Everything is kind of inside of those first exterior walls, but that's where most of the common folk and poor find themselves living, is kind of in what's referred to as the outer city. There is also a port in the city of Hethum, so that wall goes all the way to the sea, which is kind of like a cliff wall. So it's hard to attack from the sea and land for a couple of particular reasons. One of them is the outer wall, the inner wall of the city. These walls are about 80 feet high or so, and between 40 and 50 feet thick. And all of these walls are made of like this deep, dark basalt style rock. So very, very, very dense, very, very sturdy walls. And the inner city covers the different boroughs, basically different sections of the city that each kind of have their own particular thing, which the party members will get into a little bit later upon their return. Then there is the citadel itself. The citadel is this 100-foot tall, basically completely solid basalt structure that houses the king, what was originally the king and his counselors and their families, and all of the particular portions of government that basically run the kingdom, right? So it is a fortress city. Hethum built it in particular during his War of Unification, because originally the Nicaean kingdom was just a whole bunch of independent, like lordships, basically, that Hethum was tired of all of their squabbling, and so he fought a War of Unification, put them all together. So the last kind of interesting defensive thing that the city of Hethum has going for it is that one day's standard march outside of the city, there is watchtowers all the way around. So from the outer wall of the city all the way, one day march all the way around, there are watchtowers that were all within visible distance of each other, and they're manned 24/7, so that any approaching army, basically the city itself is going to have at least one day of notice prior to any army actually coming to lay siege to it. And this is obviously very, very beneficial for security purposes, as well as like, oh, hey, by the way, we really need to get out, et cetera, et cetera. But there's no real easy way to sneak up on the city itself. At this, there happens to be kind of a little bit of a shanty town. This one day's march exit from the city, it's kind of a regular stopping point for travelers along the King's Road. And so the party ends up stopping in a inn for the evening. They meet the innkeeper, whose name is Brenda. Dox ends up helping her bus tables because it's a rather busy day by the time that, evening by the time that they get there. And then Von Beck, again, still completely just enraptured by this tankard to go, basically tries to get leave from Brenda to attempt to brew some ale in order to try and match it. And Brenda basically says, you can do it, just not in my tavern, right? And so he goes outside and starts brewing, and the city watch is like, oh, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh yeah, Brenda said that I could brew here. And Brenda in particular actually said, don't burn down my tavern, right? Don't burn down my inn. So he's kind of like in the alley right next to the inn, or whatever, trying to set up this brew kit with like an open flame and everything. And so the city watch is like, hey man, like what are you doing in an alley trying to brew like some shit like right next to Miss Brenda's? Like we know this lady, right? So the city guard goes in. One of the interesting things about Roderick is that Roderick was previously a member of a city guard from a small town in the south, and so one of the features that he has is to be able to like talk to the common city guard and like have instant rapport with them. So through Roderick's finesse, basically, he is able to save Von Beck, and they go kind of to the outskirts of the city where Von Beck brews. And one of the deals that they made with the city guard was that, hey, like I'm gonna brew this ale. I'll bring you guys a cup in the morning because obviously you just started your 12-hour watch, and it's like just past sunset. So we'll meet you first thing in the morning. We'll give you a taste of the brew, whatever, right? And so the city guard is like, yeah, we can work with that. So they and the rest of the party just ends up staying in the inn, with the exception of Milo. Milo is a druid. Milo ends up sleeping with the horses. In the stables. I had them roll a stealth check to see if they were noticed or not, and in this particular city they were not. In this shanty town they were not seen, and then they basically Von Beck and Roderick meet up with the city guards. They taste the ale. Ale's pretty good, but not quite as good as what was in the tankard to go. And then they return inside to Brenda's, where Gorstag tries both Von Beck's ale as well as the house ale that Brenda makes. And he ends up enjoying the Brenda's brew, which was like kind of a lighter, more citrusy, better for like breakfast, right? Style of ale. He prefers that to the rather hearty stout that Von Beck has prepared. And so Von Beck, kind of being disappointed, but understanding that he still made a pretty darn good ale, unfortunately lost the bet to Gorstag and had to pay over a coin, or lost the bet to Brenda and had to pay over the coin. But then the party continues on their way north and west, and they find themselves in the town of Fork after at the end of the next day's travel. And so they go into this inn, and the innkeeper is kind of like not in a really good mood. He doesn't like outsiders. He typically prefers to talk to there's like a logging kind of because they're right next to this particular portion of this particular portion of the King's Road kind of splits off. One path goes north into the Northern Territories. One path goes west along the southern edge of the Kingswood, which is this protected area that King Hethum set aside in order to respect the Druids. And this is the forest that Milo originally comes from. So he's familiar with the area, although he kind of avoided the towns on his travels in, for the most part. But they get to the town of Fork. They meet this barkeep. The barkeep's kind of like pretty off-puttish, but they just deal with it or whatever. Milo gets found in this stable because he doesn't like sleeping in the rooms, but he pays off the stable hand and is able to spend the night with the horse. And eventually they get back onto the road. They're going by logging encampments. Basically, the innkeep basically told them, like, if you don't want any trouble, don't talk to the logging crews, and they won't cause trouble for you, right? So they do go past a logging crew, but they don't make any major interactions. They avoid any kind of major conflict, and then they just keep kind of walking for a little while. After a few days, they've seen like pretty regular kind of like King's Guard, in a sense, kind of like just town watch, but like federalized in a sense that continue to travel up and down the King's Road, maintaining peace and order, right? And so after a few days, they get past the very last logging encampments, and there is basically nothing on this road. They're traveling right next to the river. So on one side, basically, they have a river and that's on the southern side. And on the northern side, they have basically they have the Kingswood, right? And so after a few days of traveling along the road, they stop seeing the city guards. Like they're past all of the they're basically past all the logging encampments, and they run across this older gentleman who calls himself Master Obej. He is a hunt master who works for one of the members of the aristocracy, and Milo really does not like this man from the get-go, basically, because obviously, like, this dude hunts in his woods, so not necessarily a big fan. And huntsmen, particularly hunt masters for the aristocracy, they don't hunt for necessarily food, they hunt for sport. So it's not like, you're actually getting anything out of this. It's literally just for entertainment. So Milo's not a big fan of this, but the rest of the party's like, oh yeah, sure, like, this is fine, whatever. And then Gorstag sits down and with this individual and plays a game of chess. But it's a slightly modified version of chess. The centaurs who live next to on the eastern side of the Athenians have this the game basically that they use to choose their generals, and this is it's a game that they train their entire lives for. This is how they make war, kind of in a peaceful ways through this game, and so that has filtered out through the world, through trade and the like, and this kind of dumbed down version has found its way into the hands of Master Obej. And so Gorstag sits down, sits down across from him, and Dox, being the mystic that she is, and using her psionic ability, looks and starts to read Master Obej's mind. And so Master Obej kind of talks and has this roughly intellectual conversation, as it were, about some of the kind of just almost grandstanding on points of modern day philosophy, or stoicism, or what have you. And as the game of chess continues, Gorstag thinks that he has an early lead, and then slowly but surely it devolves poorly. And as Dox is looking into Master Obej's mind, they see that originally he sees himself as a boy sitting across the table from a middle-aged man, right? And this position is going poorly, and Dox can feel that, oh no, this position is going poorly, and it's the same position that's presented on the board in front of them. And then after that, it gets Dox feels like Master Obej is a little bit older, and the man across them is also a little bit older, probably coming closer to what we would consider retirement age, and the position is starting to, this is now a very complex position, but I might be able to actually pull something out. And then eventually, the final kind of thought that Dox receives from Master Obej is, now I'm sitting across from an old man, and I understand this position fully, and I am taking advantage of it. I have matured from this bad position into this good one, and so kind of that follows the progression a little bit of what Master Obej feels in that moment as Gorstag loses the game of chess. And eventually, after that, Master Obej finds their way to bed, and the party sets up a watch for the evening, and Dox has a dream. They're presented with an open green field, and it's like a regular sunny day, but then eventually they see the moon rise, and then the sky is split. Half of it is bright daylight, the other half is the darkness of moonlit night. and then eventually the sun and the moon both set on opposite ends, and then they are Dox is stuck in a field of grass that is locked in twilight. Before them is presented a stone table with the expanse of it's a 49 by 49 checkered board sitting atop this table, and there are all of these pieces that are arrayed along the table. And as she's looking at these pieces, she realizes, oh, these are the members of my party. And so each of the members of the party, behind them is another piece that they don't recognize, that Dox doesn't recognize. But then Dox sees her own piece in front of her, and a creature in a gray cloak with scaled and clawed hands reaches out and turns Dox's piece towards her and asks the question, "I know who stands behind your friends, but who stands behind you?" And that is the end of the first session of this campaign that I'm running, that I don't necessarily have a particular name for. There's a workshop name, but that our campaign on Renkaat as part of the Conduit, that is how we ended the first session. So I hope that you enjoyed kind of this little recap that we were doing. And I'm going to try and work a little bit harder on kind of getting these out and recounting exactly what it is and catching up with my current campaign. Currently play on average every 2 weeks. So as long as I can continue to put these together and get them out to you, should be able to catch up fairly quickly. And then it'll probably be about every 2 or 3 weeks before I get these back out, for everyone to be able to kind of be caught up on the synopsis of what is going on. But I really do hope that you enjoyed episode 1 of Duke's D&D Debauchery.